I think we should be live by now. Hello and welcome, Success Grid Nation, to this episode of the Success Grid podcast with your host, Hussein Talib. In this episode, I have with me Alan Lazaros to talk about how to optimize for success and how to be more of a human and have a holistic approach to self-development and self-improvement. At age 2, his father passed away in a car accident. At age 26, after getting into nearly a fatal car accident himself, Alan questions everything he was doing in his life. He questioned who he was and the choices he was making. He was at the all-time low, and he decided to change his trajectory forever. Although he had a successful career in corporate America, he decided to start his own business and dedicate helping others get into the next level in their life, business, health, and wealth. He is the CEO of the Next Level University podcast, a global top 100 podcast with over 1,500 episodes, listened over 150 countries. Alan, welcome to the show.
Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it. And if we're going to talk about success, it is one of my favorite topics in the world. And I think my life would have been very different had I learned some of this stuff younger. So hopefully I can
Yeah,
help some people.
definitely. So, first thing is, what is your definition of success and how you see other people define success that you agree or disagree with?
Yeah. So the prior to my car accident at 26 that you mentioned in the intro, I was successful from the outside in, but I was not successful from the inside out. I was achievement oriented. I was doing very well financially. I succeeded in my career and my professional development. I was very professionally developed, computer engineering degree, master's in business. But it wasn't until 26 when I realized that real success is from the inside out.
Mm.
And so instead of achieving at the expense of fulfillment and at the expense of my core values and at the expense of my character, it's now I flipped the script and I did the opposite. And I focused on the inside first and then let success be a byproduct of that. And so that's kind of my what I focus on now, which is just helping people sort of reinvent themselves from who they truly are and how do they become successful as a byproduct of that instead of trying to go chase these things externally that may or may not actually contribute to who they are as a person.
Cool, that's cool. So you're talking about inside instead of outside, and this is something that may seem talking about personal optimization for success. So what do you mean exactly? Can you expand on that from differentiation between inside and outside?
Yeah, so inside is the inner work. And I think that all of us are sort of righty or lefty. So, and very few of us are very ambidextrous. So, for example, prior to 26, I was successful on the outside, meaning I was very well professionally developed. I knew how to read, write. I was good at academics. I got straight A's in high school. I went to one of the top tech schools in the world called Worcester Polytechnic Institute. I got my bachelor's degree in computer engineering. I got my master's degree. And so I was very well polished in terms of my career and my professional development. But what I didn't work enough on is my personal development, my inner stuff. So emotional intelligence, inner work, having needing to go to therapy, understand my childhood, understand myself, emotional maturity, that kind of thing. So I often use an example of I think statistically speaking, young girls tend to have a diary, when they're younger, and that's the inner work. Having a diary and reflecting on your thoughts and reflecting on who you are and understanding your core values, understanding what lights you up and what doesn't versus this sort of outer success that's just focused on how the economy works, why it works that way, having a great resume, having a great cover letter, LinkedIn, that kind of stuff. And so I think what I've come to understand now, I've coached. I just surpassed my 5,000th hour of one-on-one coaching with people all over the world. My youngest client is 18. My oldest client is 63. New Zealand, Spain, Canada, all over the world. And so at this stage, I've come to understand that all of us are righty or lefty. Some of us are really professionally developed and we do well in our careers, but our personal life suffers. Sometimes our health suffers or our relationships suffer. And then there's these other amazing, heart driven, wonderful, personal growth oriented, emotionally mature, emotionally intelligent people who, believe it or not, often don't succeed that much in their career. And I'm trying to sort of merge those two worlds so that we can all become ambidextrous. And that's when I think fulfillment can kind of come hand in hand with success rather than, succeeding like some of my mentors at the expense of their marriage.
So there is multiple things. Like for example, you're talking about kind of holistic approach. This holistic approach, like I think Jim Rohn said, you need to take care of your health first, and the rest will follow: wealth, family, a lot of things. So that's the most important thing, because if we focus on a certain area, we might neglect different areas. But the most important thing is like our health, because if you lose that, you won't be able to do the other things that you might be wanting to do in your business or your life. So do we have to have this kind of have this our life being having this standard and go to next level every day of our lives, having this kind of standard that maybe Olympic athletes have in their life, do you think?
Yeah, so I think, the two core principles that I think are the most important is self-belief and self-worth. And I think that who you become is kind of a byproduct of those, and you can build them. That said, when it comes to what you're talking about, the word holistic, at NLU, Next Level University, we talk about holistic self-improvement. So health, wealth, and love. Health is physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. Wealth is how you make your money. In other words, do you actually enjoy what you do? Is it meaningful to you? The second part of wealth is how much do you make? Is that increasing or decreasing over time? And then the third is where do you invest your capital? Where do you invest your money? What do you spend it? And then the love piece is your intimate relationship, your immediate family, your children, your colleagues, clients, customers, uh, friends, extended relatives, mentors, mentees, all that kind of stuff. And so you've got those are the three main areas. And I think of it like a tripod. So if you've ever had a camera on a tripod and you have to lift the legs up, if one of the legs were to fall, then the whole tripod falls. And I think the important metaphor here is you can't move up a level in all three simultaneously. It's very difficult to do that. So what I try to do is I try to focus on my health, my wealth, and my love, but there's always one that's sort of lagging. It's very, very difficult. And even if you just think statistically, let's say you want to be top 1% in health, that's 1 out of 100. And if you wanted to be top 1% in wealth, that's 1 out of 100. And then if you want to be top 1% in love, that's 1 out of 100. And if you do the math on that, that's 1/100 times 1/100 times 1/100, which is really 1 in 1,000,000. And so if you are top 1% in health, wealth, and love, you are 1 in 1,000,000. And I just looked around as a kid and I saw really miserable human beings who were not holistic and were not fulfilled. And I tried to figure out how to not end up that way. And ironically, I did end up that way until after that car accident when I started to really focus on all three instead of just my wealth.
Definitely, because uh, as we were talking about, if we need to focus on all things, but we have to have maybe some kind of priority, because you mentioned that it's difficult to grow with all at the same level. Like something like your health might be more, or your wealth might be more, but we need to focus on certain things. But eventually health is very important, because this is that drives the human beings to achieve more in life and drive them next for the next goal, I guess. But you mentioned multiple things, like we are talking about success, you mentioned fulfillment and happiness. So everything that we do as humans, as we develop ourselves, as we develop our minds to do whatever it is that we want to do in our business or life, what is our end goal there? Is it to be happy? Is it to be fulfilled? Is there a difference, do you think, between these two? And does all of this lead to what we call success?
So the question there is so powerful. And I think that's really the core of what I'm trying to help everyone with, because this is what I got wrong. Uh, I think that, the pursuit of happiness or are you happy? I just think it's the wrong target. And the reason why is because it's a little esoteric. We don't really know what it means. We don't really know how to sustain it. I wrote a blog about this recently, but I think happiness, there was this story of me in my early 20s and my mom had basically said, "Why does intelligence matter so much to you?" And I tried to explain it. She said, "Why isn't it enough to just be nice?" And I remember I tried to explain it to her and I said, I'm trying to, so I looked around and quite frankly, I used to be bashful about this and not share it, but I grew up in an environment that I saw a lot of miserable people. Marriages did not look good to me. You know, people hated their careers. They just seemed really unhappy, and there was a lot of alcohol, a lot of people escaping their life. It didn't seem like they were designing fulfilling lives that they love. They didn't seem very happy to me. And as a kid, I was an engineer, thinker, trying to figure out, like, why does everyone seem so unhappy to me? And now I've come to understand why. And the real reason is, I think, we're after the wrong thing. If I were to ask anyone, are you happy? I think the answer would be yes or no, but it's a spectrum. Like, okay, 0 to 10, how happy are you? I don't know, maybe a 7 in this moment or in general. It's all this weird thing. And so Jim Rohn would say it's like chasing butterflies. You never really catch them. And so what I've come to understand is that happiness is actually a formula, and I'm more of a math science brain, so forgive me for that. But the formula is 3 parts, and this took me 30 years to figure out. The first part of the formula is joy. Am I enjoying this moment? And it's intentional. Am I intentionally enjoying this podcast right now? Okay. So joy is playing basketball because you love basketball. Joy is snowboarding because you love snowboarding. Joy is podcasting because you love podcasting. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to enjoy every moment, but joy, that's number one. Number two is pleasure. And pleasure, I actually think, is a trap. And I think pleasure is the mouse wheel that we get caught on. It's the treadmill that we get caught on. And I certainly did. Pleasure is all the things that are immediate dopamine hits that go away just as quick as they come. Drugs, alcohol, porn, all the quick dopamine stuff that creates short-term pleasure, but at the expense of the third one and the most important one, which is fulfillment. Fulfillment is a different word. It's a different feeling. Are you fulfilled? And the cool part about fulfillment is it doesn't go away in an instant. Fulfillment is when you are growing and contributing in alignment with your calling. Fulfillment is when you do hard things that force you to grow and challenge yourself. Fulfillment, I use the Stairmaster as an example. I said, no matter who you are, no matter where you're from, everyone hates the Stairmaster. It's not pleasurable. It sucks. It's brutal. You're dripping sweat. It just sucks. But when you're done, you're proud of yourself and you feel fulfilled. And you can't, so pleasure, I use a donut, eating donuts. I love donuts. They're great, but they're never going to fulfill me. And I think that what happens is we orient our life towards quote unquote happiness. And what we don't realize is that what everyone is calling happiness is actually pleasure. And that's such a dangerous road. And so for me, alcohol was my kryptonite, and I would chase all these fun times at the expense of fulfillment. And after my car accident at 26, I flipped the script and I decided, you know what? I'm going to focus on fulfillment. I'm going to try to, yes, I still have some pleasure, but that's not going to be the goal. Pleasure is no longer going to be the goal. My goal is going to be fulfillment, and then success can be a byproduct of that. And so that's the difference between, I think, happiness and fulfillment. Fulfillment doesn't go away in an instant, and joy and fulfillment needs to be the focus, and pleasure can come sort of along the way. But if pleasure is the goal, I do believe you're in trouble, just like I was.
Yeah, I do believe, like, you talking about joy and pleasure, they are kind of at the moment, they are not kind of maybe long term, and fulfillment kind of is. And also, I read or something, I watched something that happiness is, someone saying that happiness is giving others, giving people without expecting anything back in return. So
Mm.
that could be happiness, maybe helping other people, maybe this, like you mentioned that here in you speak, because it is important to help people around you, and this will give you some kind of a feeling. Maybe it could be happiness, maybe it's something different, but whatever it is, it will give you something back without actually them giving you something.
Even right now, I'm here. This is free. I'm here for 2 reasons. Number one, to serve, and number two is to practice my craft. I'm here to grow and contribute. Grow, becoming a better speaker, challenging questions, understanding how to articulate, right? And then contribute beyond myself. Help someone. Some of you I've never met, some of you I never will meet, but I'm here to grow and contribute, and that is fulfilling.
Mhm.
Even though it's not necessarily pleasurable, right? I would much rather be I don't know, watching Netflix, eating Cheetos. I'm joking. But the point is that the pleasurable stuff, and you need some pleasure in your life, the pleasurable stuff is you can get caught in that. If you have a misbelief deep in your unconscious that life is about having fun, I actually think ironically, you're going to be having a very unfulfilling life. If you focus on fulfillment and meaning, and that's the last piece I would say is meaning, is your work meaningful? Are the relationships in your life meaningful? Your intimate relationship, for example, is it a deeply meaningful relationship? It's not always easy, but it's meaningful. The easy road of Pleasure Town is just so unfulfilling. And I know because I got caught in that trap. But the hard road, the climb, the metaphorical Mount Everest that you climb and challenge yourself to grow and contribute beyond yourself for a deeply meaningful purpose. I mean, that's where I think life is amazing.
Yeah.
And some of it sucks. And I think that's part of life too, but that's another conversation.
I do think maybe life could be about being responsible. You are responsible for whatever it is that you do to yourself or others. Responsibility, and this is one of the reasons in general we are should be accountable for our actions, because not our intentions but our actions, because our actions tell the true story of things, I guess.
Hmm.
Yeah,
The
sure.
I just want to add to that real quick. So you mentioned responsibility. Taking on responsibility for what you say, think, do, feel, and believe, like that's what you have control over. You can't control who's president, you can't control what country you're born in, you can't control who your parents were, but you can control what you say, think, do, feel, and believe. You can change the meaning of your past. You can choose a more empowering meaning. You can and you're also responsible for what you don't say, don't think, don't do, right? If you didn't read the book when you should have, if you didn't listen to the podcast when you should have, if you didn't take that action when you should have, we are responsible for our own life. And a lot of people who are very nihilistic and hopeless and helpless, and I've been there too, aren't taking responsibility for their own life. It wasn't until after my car accident that I sat down and I took full responsibility for the outcomes in my life. And fortunately, here I am 9 years later, and I'm deeply fulfilled, even though my life is far more challenging than it used to be. I think responsibility is the hardest road, but it's also the most meaningful. And I hope that this sparks something in someone to help them sort of take responsibility, because I think taking responsibility in advance is how you end up without regret at the end.
Yeah, it's your choice. You took it.
Yep.
Yeah. So what is the best or worst advice that someone ever told you?
The worst advice someone ever told me was my guidance counselor saying I wouldn't get into MIT. And I actually was dumb enough to listen. So that's the worst advice I've ever gotten. And I've gotten some bad advice, but that one was terrible.
Mm.
The best advice I've ever gotten was when I was young. I was told by my mother to aim high, and she said, "When you aim high, you'll have choices." So when my father passed away at 2 years old, she had two kids, and she was a stay-at-home mom, and she didn't feel like she had many choices. And she ended up getting with my stepdad, and they didn't get along very well. So she felt like she had to make a tough choice. And she, I think, deep down, probably wishes she had aimed higher. And so luckily, she told me to aim high. In everything that you do, always aim high, aim high, aim high. And if you do, and you aim high and you sincerely work hard and work smart towards those goals and dreams, you will have choices. And that has proved true. And it's the harder road, but I'm grateful. And my mom has given me some really terrible advice in my life, and I will call that out. I will call a spade a spade. And quite frankly, she did not know what she was talking about nearly as much as I thought. And I know we feel that way about our parents, all of us do. So, and I'm sure she feels the same way about her mom. But that piece of advice was world class. And she said, Alan, you can be a CEO or you can be a farmer, and I'm going to love you either way. But if you choose CEO, you can wake up one day and decide to be a farmer, but it does not work the other way around. And that was her version of teaching a 7-year-old to aim high. And one time someone got mad that I said that, and they reached out, said, "Farmers work really hard. My so and so's a farmer." I listen. I wasn't trying to offend anyone. the point is now I am a CEO, and one day if I don't want to be, I can just decide to be whatever I want. I can go fishing or whatever. But I'm grateful that I have the choice, and I've earned that choice, luckily, through taking responsibility and just working my face off for 35 years.
Yeah, I love that. I love that perspective. Like the higher you aim, the more choices you will have. That's an amazing say and metaphor actually. So, Alan, where can people get in touch with you and learn more about you and what you do?
So we have a podcast, as you mentioned. We just surpassed our 1600th episode. It's called Next Level University. It's spelt just like it sounds. You can Google it. It'll come up on every podcast platform. We're also on YouTube. We do a episode every day, and it's not quick little tiny episodes. It's episodes similar to this one actually, where we call it, self improvement in your pocket from anywhere on the planet, completely free. And if you can get 1% better per day, your whole life can change. And that's what the whole podcast is built on. And we help you level up your life, love, health, and wealth. And that's what we're about. So if anyone's curious, Next Level University will come up, and I hope that you enjoy it.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Alan, very much. An amazing episode, great knowledge and new insights and perspective into things. This was amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it very much.